The husband's company has been performing poorly recently. There is an urgent need to secure a big deal to alleviate the situation. I privately contacted the boss of the client. I wanted to help my husband. For me, it's just a small effort. I never expected to encounter my husband and his female assistant in an intimate and ambiguous situation at the same club. I directly asked him what was going on. He looked at me disdainfully and said, "The company is at a critical moment right now. Linda's father has resources that can help me. We are all here for work. What about you using my resources and eating my food? But you can't help at all. All you know is how to spend money. What right do you have to question me? Don't block the way here." I coldly stared at the lipstick mark on my husband's shirt collar. I decided to no longer cooperate with the client's boss, and I proposed a divorce. But my husband seemed very flustered. He kept begging me not to leave. Later, in the private room of the club, I helped Ethan secure a much-needed big order with just 2 sentences. Several directors from the Johnson Group were all smiles. He said respectfully, "Since you have spoken, I will send someone to sign the contract tomorrow." I stood up, ready to leave. I smiled and extended my hand to shake theirs. "Then I will trouble everyone." "Oh dear, you are too polite, not a trouble at all." After leaving the private room, I sighed. Although I don't like socializing, this collaboration can help Ethan turn the situation around. The company can also be saved. I rubbed my stiff neck as I walked out. As I looked up, I happened to see Ethan walking into the club intimately with his female assistant. His suit was wrinkled. His tie was also crooked. There was a clear lipstick mark on the collar of his shirt. He leaned drowsily against his female assistant beside him. His legs felt weak as if they had no strength left. "Mrs. Ethan, what are you doing here?" the female assistant suddenly exclaimed. I raised an eyebrow coldly. I glanced at Ethan beside her. "My last name is Victoria. Are you being too old-fashioned in your thinking?" The female assistant lowered her head. Her voice became softer. "I'm sorry, Victoria." Ethan frowned. "What kind of attitude is this? Linda is my capable assistant. You need to watch your tone when you speak. Don't act so high and mighty. Besides, you are marrying me. Is there a problem with calling you Mrs. Ethan? Why do you have to put on such airs?" I let out a cold laugh. It felt like all my efforts just now were in vain. Drinking like this in the morning. We finally managed to get an appointment with the project leader of Johnson Group. Ethan drank a few more glasses to show his sincerity. Linda's response seemed standard. In reality, it reveals Ethan's struggles. I didn't pick up on her words. "Just ask Ethan directly. Since you've already met with the person in charge, why are you still here?" Linda said, "Because the person in charge declined. I had my dad find out that their boss is here for business. So we came over too." But she hadn't finished speaking. Ethan interrupted her. No need to explain so much to her. He swayed as he stood in front of Linda, protecting her behind him. This action made me feel very uncomfortable. He was also holding Linda's wrist. I looked up and saw Linda's face was flushed. Her gaze was a bit ambiguous. I couldn't tell if Ethan was really drunk or just pretending. He pointed his finger at my nose and said, "What right do you have to question me here?" Linda was trying to help me. That's why she asked her dad to help gather information. She has put a lot of effort into this project. Just now, she even blocked alcohol for me. She almost got taken advantage of by that ill-intentioned man. I have put in so much effort for this project. Can't you see that? What have you ever done for me? You're just a housewife. What gives you the right to question me? Ethan said this excitedly. Linda's eyes turned red as well. He gritted his teeth. His eyes were red. "You actually chased me all the way here. Did you install a tracker on my phone again, Victoria? I really can't stand you anymore." Ethan shouted angrily in the hallway, without mercy. I coldly watched him lose control. I was about to speak up to bring him back to his senses. Just then, a few of Johnson's directors came down from upstairs. They saw me walking over. They repeatedly assured me that they would fulfill their promises to me. I let out a cold laugh. I turned to Ethan and said, "No need. He's not worth it." The other party was taken aback, noticing that my expression was off. They immediately left tactfully. Linda said in a somewhat strange tone, "Victoria is a full-time housewife. Are the friends you usually interact with all around this age?" Ethan was about to get angry after hearing that, but I stopped him with just 2 sentences. "Your dad asked you to come. Did he not give you the information?" Those are a few directors from Johnson Group. Linda was taken aback for a moment. She immediately turned around to leave. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I'll go get them back right away." Ethan immediately grabbed her. No need to go, Victoria. Don't scare people. What can those old men do? Johnson Group is for college students' entrepreneurship. How could there be directors of such an old age? He rolled his eyes impatiently. Are you saying that because you're jealous of Linda? At this age, still using such lies to scare a young girl. Is it really necessary? I have said it before. No matter how big the business gets, I will not do anything irresponsible. But you always doubt this and that, like a jealous person. I watched Ethan's casual, intimate gestures towards Linda. I shook my head with a bitter smile. Ever since the company completely belonged to the Ethan family, Ethan seems like a different person. In the past 2 years, he has changed 4 female assistants. Each one would accompany him to various clubs and hotels. I asked him the reason. He always explained with the same reason. He and they are just ordinary colleagues. The problem lies with me. Now, I no longer have the heart to look for evidence of his infidelity. I rubbed my throbbing temples. Say it, then you all go in. To meet the boss of Johnson. I walked around Ethan towards the door. He suddenly lost control of his emotions. He rushed in front of me and shouted, "Did I agree to let you go? Go apologize to Linda." I took a deep breath and said to Ethan, "Don't act drunk here. Linda, hurry over. Grab Ethan's arm. Ethan, I'm fine. Please don't let me cause a rift between you and Victoria. I know she's acting this way because she cares about you too much. I can understand that. I'm really amused by these 2 people. It's one thing for Ethan to put on an act in front of me. Now there's another little fox who excels at pretending. These frustrating days, I've really had enough." I kept a stern face. I raised my hand. Linda screamed with her eyes shut in fear. "Ah," I coldly snorted. I pulled my hand back. Linda didn't get the slap she imagined. She opened her eyes. She smiled awkwardly. Ethan said impatiently, "Stop laughing. Are you trying to mock me? Even if you're jealous because you care about me, you've gone too far today. If you don't apologize to Linda, I will never forgive you." I scoffed, looking at Ethan. With contempt in my eyes, "No need for your forgiveness. I'll tell you directly, Ethan. I won't apologize to her. I will choose to divorce. Resolve this issue as soon as possible. The company now belongs to Ethan. He saved my father's life back then. This debt of gratitude is considered repaid. As for the so-called love I once believed in, standing under the cherry blossom tree, everyone looks beautiful. The current Ethan is no longer worthy of my love." Ethan started to panic. He probably didn't expect me to file for divorce over this small matter. He has done many excessive things in the past 2 years, but I have always overlooked them for the sake of our past feelings. I didn't hold it against him. The moment the divorce agreement was placed on his desk, he finally understood I wasn't joking. He has always been like this. It's like testing my patience, constantly probing my limits. Then she cried and apologized to me again. She even mentioned how she saved my dad from under the wheels back then, trying to make me remember. This time is no different on Kingaming Festival. I went to pay respects to my dad. When I came out of the cemetery, I happened to run into 2 of Ethan's subordinates. They told me, "Ethan has something important to discuss with me." He asked me to come over. I thought he would talk to me about the divorce, but the outcome was unexpected. He actually rented an exhibition hall, displaying all of my dad's artworks from his lifetime. He held an art exhibition. The title was in memory of his deceased father-in-law. His father-in-law was closer to him than his own dad. I looked at the enlarged photo of my father. My heart was filled with anger. I clenched my fists. My nails dug deep into my palms. "Wife, come in quickly. Ethan is wearing a sharp suit. He walks out of the exhibition hall with a beaming smile." I shake off his outstretched hand. I confront him. "Ethan, what do you mean by this? I really regret it now. I didn't change the safe's password. I gave him the chance to create this situation." Ethan says with a smile, "I just miss my dad. I've been thinking about how to properly commemorate him. Linda's idea is the best. Hold an art exhibition for Dad. Let everyone remember him together. Several paintings have already been sold at high prices. People often say, a person's true disappearance is being forgotten, but I will never let my dad be forgotten." He leans close to my ear and whispers, "Honey, I was wrong. I was drunk that day. Don't take it to heart. I won't divorce you." I try to control my anger. I walk around him, looking towards the exhibition hall. I saw Linda preparing to take down a painting to send to the buyer. I rushed over and shouted, "Don't touch that painting." Linda was startled by my shout. Her hand trembled. The painting she had just taken down fell to the ground. I was so angry that my whole body shook. I turned around and slapped Ethan behind me. That was my dad's most cherished work. The painting of a little girl chasing butterflies in the garden. That's me. What good deed did you do? How dare she touch my dad's painting? In front of everyone. Ethan was stunned by my slap. Linda immediately reacted. She shouted, quickly ran to Ethan's side. Victoria, how can you hit someone so casually? She gently touched Ethan's cheek where he was hit. She asked with concern, Ethan, are you okay? Does it hurt? Ethan looked up. Her face was full of anger. Victoria, don't be ungrateful. I'm making a big deal out of apologizing to you. What more are you dissatisfied with? You think I would be afraid to divorce you? You are a woman who doesn't know how to care for her husband. Who else would be willing to be with you besides me? I'm just giving you a chance. I let out a cold laugh. I threw the divorce agreement at him. What else is there to say? Hurry up and sign. Ethan was stunned by my insistence. He hadn't reacted yet. Linda spoke up first. Victoria, as a woman, this is really a bit excessive. Ethan has done so much to make you happy. He has done all these things. These paintings are not masterpieces. Everyone buys them for Ethan's sake. After spending so much money, not only do you not appreciate it, but you also resort to violence. Is this really appropriate? I don't think you deserve Ethan at all. He should divorce you. He deserves better. I watched the young girl stand up for love. I think today's young people really have their own ways. Seeing tears welling up in Ethan's eyes, it seems he was truly moved by her, but he thought for a moment, then turned to me and said, divorce is fine, but Blueheart Tech has to belong to me. I smiled coldly. Ethan is very smart. He knows the company cannot do without Blueheart Tech's support, although the company is nominally his. As long as Blueheart Tech is still in my hands, he will have to spend a lot of money to hire Blueheart Tech in the future. This will significantly increase operational costs. This is also the main reason he is unwilling to divorce me. Unfortunately, his manipulation of my father has already made me very angry. Blueheart Tech will not be handed over to him. The company, I also do not plan to give it to him. I took out my phone and sent messages to several shareholders of the company after receiving the reply. The phone was placed in front of Ethan. Ethan let out a cold laugh. Victoria, who do you think you are? You're asking them to hold a shareholders meeting. Will they really come? The era of your Victoria family has long ended. The company is now under my control. I advise you not to waste any more time. I calmly put away my phone. I said lightly, is it a waste of effort? The truth will be revealed at the meeting. As I spoke, I contacted a few people. In less than an hour, all of my father's works were carefully retrieved. Ethan put the items into a bank safe he had no right to open. He looked at the empty exhibition hall, fuming with anger. Victoria, I understand your intention in calling the shareholders meeting. You're just trying to find those shareholders to back you up, right? But you're mistaken. Only I can make them money now, after your father's death. The Victoria family has already fallen. Now is the era of Ethan. I responded lightly. Then I left Ethan and Linda, who were still angry. I turned and walked away, actually. I intentionally gave Ethan time to handle things. The shareholders meeting is not to be taken lightly. Ethan's abilities are limited. I see this clearly in my heart. He always thinks he is superior, talented, but he is actually arrogant, self-righteous. Back then, my dad thought he was practical and reliable, so he taught him all his skills. He used the resources of the Victoria family and smoothly walked the path to success. In reality, he is just a man who rose to power by relying on others. To deal with such a person, all you need to do is take back everything you gave him. On the day of the shareholders meeting, Ethan brought Linda with him. He convinced Linda's father to invest in his project. As a result, Linda officially became Ethan's supporter. I don't understand. A housewife who hasn't worked for many years, what role does holding a shareholders meeting play but to show respect to everyone? I still came. As soon as Ethan entered, he sat directly in the main seat. He relied on the investment he held from Linda's family. He became the one with the most shares. He proudly tapped the table with his finger. What will be discussed at today's shareholders meeting? I walked into the conference room in high heels. To get you off the stage, except for Ethan. The other shareholders in the conference room stood up immediately when they saw me. They slowly sat down. I nodded. Only then did they gradually sit down. Ethan was stunned by the scene before him. What right do you have to dismiss me? You are no longer a shareholder of the company. I casually found a chair to sit down. Whether or not you are a shareholder is not up to you to decide. Ethan, don't underestimate the Victoria family. The investors I found for you back then, it's not something you can just find anywhere. I was originally thinking, as long as you don't provoke me, you can still continue to be the legal representative of the company and maintain the largest personal shareholding, but you've gone too far. You've made me very unhappy. I placed a document on the table, pushed it in front of Ethan. Your personal shareholding is only 40, even with the temporary investment you brought in. It totals only 43. I glanced at Linda, implying something. Ethan immediately retorted, that's still better than all the shareholders present. I had him open the document. I said to him, you are mistaken. Here, besides you, there is only one shareholder. Ethan looked down at the document. His eyes widened suddenly. His face was full of surprise. How is this possible? The remaining 57 belong to you. Ethan suddenly stood up from his seat, still holding the document in his hands. He looked at me. He looked at the other shareholders again. He asked with a trembling voice, you all gave your shares to her. What is wrong with you all? She is just a housewife. Why did you give all the shares to her? You are targeting me like this. You should consider yourselves too. Don't you need me to help you make money? One of the shareholders impatiently dug at his ear. Say it. What are you shouting about? The money we invested in you back then. Actually, it was given to us by Miss Victoria. We were just holding the shares for her. Over the years, she has already distributed the profits to us. I didn't expect you to do such an ungrateful thing. We look down on you even more now. Ethan murmured to himself. His voice was filled with despair. You did it on purpose. The Victoria family. The Victoria family is deliberately plotting against me. I stood up, walked over to Ethan, and said to him, it's about the divorce. I can temporarily keep your position as president. If we don't get divorced, after you're dismissed, you can either be a manager or simply sell all your shares to me. That would show some backbone. At that time, Linda and her father can help you start over. That way, it won't seem like I'm forcing you to divorce. Ethan finally understood. He suddenly held my hand tightly, repeatedly saying, wife, I was wrong. I really was wrong. Wife, can you forgive me this time? I absolutely did nothing to betray you. Really, I didn't. There's really nothing between Linda and me. I assure you, I want to pull my hand back, but Ethan's grip was too strong. I couldn't break free. I had no choice. I had to step on him twice with my high heels. He bent down in pain. His hand also loosened. I've made my demands very clear. Contact me again when you've made up your mind. To prevent him from making excuses again, I finished this sentence and immediately stood up and left. The other shareholders left with me. We walked a good distance away from the office. I could still hear Linda and Ethan arguing fiercely. In the end, we left the company building. I didn't return to the home I shared with Ethan. There were too many memories there. Except for the fragments of our happy life at the beginning, I was home alone. Ethan always had a reason for not coming home. I used to think he was really busy with work. After all, he had promised my dad before he passed away to give me a better life than before. He also swore to take on my dad's responsibilities, to be my guardian. However, these promises and vows gradually faded away with the passage of time and the erosion of desire, and slowly disappeared. Suddenly, it started to rain heavily outside. I had a good sleep in my flat in the city center. I slept soundly this time. I think about life after divorcing Ethan. I can't help but feel relaxed and happy. When I woke up, I found many missed calls on my phone. Before I could call back, the phone rang again. Is this MTKS Victoria? This is New York Central Hospital. Your husband is seriously injured. Please come over immediately. We are preparing for divorce. You can have someone else handle it. I was about to hang up. The other party continued to say, he was injured while protecting your father's grave. When I arrived at the hospital, Ethan had not yet woken up. The doctor said he had a leg injury and a concussion. He needs to be hospitalized for treatment. I helped pay for his expenses and deposited over $100,000 into the hospital account for future use. They told me the heavy rain last night triggered a landslide. My father's grave is right by the mountain. To ensure the cemetery is quiet and has an open view, the place he chose has no obstructions around it. This way, a landslide poses the greatest threat to his father's grave. As soon as Ethan heard about the risk of mudslides on that mountain, he rushed over immediately. He didn't expect to encounter the cemetery being threatened. Without hesitation, he charged forward, according to common sense. In such situations, the cemetery would have corresponding measures and subsequent compensation, but he acted as if he hadn't thought much about it. He directly ran to protect that tombstone. Ethan's good friend spoke up. He was the one who rescued Ethan from the cemetery with the rescue team. He said with a heavy tone, "Sister-in-law, I might not be able to call you that anymore, but I still want to tell you. Ethan has always kept you in his heart. You are planning to divorce him. As a daughter, you haven't even thought about protecting your father's grave. Yet he has always remembered it. I hope you can think it over seriously. After all, you have gone through many difficulties together." I ignored him. My gaze fell on Ethan, who was covered in scars. I'm a bit indecisive now. What that friend said makes some sense. After all, Ethan and I are partners who have gone through life and death trials together. When the 512 earthquake occurred, we happened to be in Sichuan. I was buried underground with him for 2 days and 2 nights. During those 48 hours, it was Ethan who kept comforting me, cheering me on. He dreamed of the future with me. He said he would definitely marry me once we got out. Later, we were rescued. At the moment I woke up in the hospital, he seriously proposed to me. At that time, I felt our relationship had reached that level. We should never be apart for a lifetime. Reality gave me a few loud slaps in the face. Coming back to my senses, I sat by the hospital bed. When I looked up, I just saw Ethan waking up. "Wife, I'll go call the doctor." "Don't go, wife." Ethan struggled to stand up. I had to stop in my tracks. He licked his dry lips. He said softly, "I'm sorry, wife. It's all my fault. I made you sad. I must have been confused by something. That's why I said those hurtful words to you. I'm really regretting it now. I don't want to lose you." Ethan had a bandage wrapped around his head. His eyes were red. Tears kept flowing. I sighed. I sat back in the chair. "Ethan, what good does it do to do this now? I just want to protect Dad's resting place from disturbance. He didn't like to be disturbed when he was alive." Ethan avoided my puzzled gaze. He said in a hoarse voice. My heart stirred slightly. "It was when my dad had the car accident. He saved my dad during the earthquake. He faced life and death with me. Now, he has done something like this again. How complex can human hearts be? Has he even deceived himself?" I was silent for a moment. I said lightly, "Let's get a divorce. You continue to be the president of your company, Victoria. You think I'm acting for the position of president?" Ethan understood my implication. He shouted loudly in agitation. As a result, it triggered a severe cough. I pressed my lips tightly together. I pressed the call button. The doctors rushed into the room. I walked out the door. As for whether Ethan is sincere, I no longer care much about it. We've been together for so many years. I know him inside out. He knows me just as well. He knows what matters most to me. He's doing this. I can't help but doubt his motives. To put it bluntly, it's just 2 things. Money and power. On the way back in the car, I sent a message to the pinned number. "Look into this person. Arrange for 2 more people to keep an eye on him." "Okay." I expressionlessly turned off my phone. Since Ethan has taken care of this matter, then my dad's grave should be fine. I originally thought he just wanted to soften my heart, but I didn't expect. His intentions are more than just that, because the next day, the news of him firmly protecting his father-in-law's grave actually trended. Ethan is the company's president. He often appears in public. He's young and accomplished, and also quite handsome. Every time he participates in public events, he always attracts a lot of attention. This incident has gained recognition and moved many netizens. Several marketing accounts have stepped up to support him. The company's reputation has significantly improved because of this. Even important figures from the business association called to check on me. At this moment, I realized one of Ethan's intentions. He wants to use public opinion pressure to make me afraid to divorce him. The remaining information, my friend also found out. Ethan has connections. He got close to an important figure in the business association. He has 2 purposes for doing this. First, he wants to establish a good image for himself. This way, even if you really divorce in the future, everyone will think the problem lies with you. Secondly, this is also a way for him to enter the business association. To get a recommendation from that important figure, I hacked into his phone. I found a lot of chat records and phone recordings. I sent everything to you. I went through all his chat records. After listening to all the recordings, in the end, I couldn't help but laugh at myself, laughing at how soft-hearted I am, and how foolish I am. I still overestimated Ethan. He feels like he has entered the business association. He found a big shot to back him up. Then he can find a way to take the remaining shares of the company from me. I found his chat records with Linda. The content is unbearable. At that moment, I almost felt sick enough to throw up. This is what he means by not betraying me. You only have me in your heart. You have never betrayed me. When these words are spoken, do you believe them yourself? It's really laughable. He made this decision. It must have been made after careful consideration. The path he chose is quite wise, relying on the business association, those bosses in the business circle. Everyone will give him some face. This is like taking a step forward, but it's really a pity. I guess I will be Ethan's lifelong rival, the path he wants to take. As long as I am here, he can forget about succeeding. I took out another phone that I don't use much. I logged into my account on a highly confidential chat software. A message was sent out immediately after. All important members of the chamber received this message on their phones. We all received instructions from the chamber president, Mr. Zero. The content is that Ethan is not allowed to enter the chamber. Uncle Joe, what's going on? You clearly promised me before. I gave you so much money. I almost risked my life. How can you go back on your word? How could the president not let me in? I'm quite famous now. Isn't the chamber all about friendship? Uncle Joe, please help me out. Say some good words for me. I really can't miss this opportunity. I just arrived at the hospital door with flowers, and I heard Ethan inside angrily making a phone call. It turns out the intermediary he found is Uncle Joe. What bad luck. Uncle Joe has been at the top of my investigation list recently. He has too many shady projects under his name. The chamber does not allow such people to exist. Making money requires a method. This is the principle my dad taught me since I was little. Seeing Ethan's plan to join the business association fail, I felt quite happy inside. I pushed open the door to the hospital room. I saw Ethan just hang up the phone. He was angrily complaining. Wife, you're here. I put the flowers in the vase. Then I helped Ethan tuck the corners of the blanket. Ethan looked at me in surprise. His eyes filled with joy. Wife, have you forgiven me? I gently touched the wound on his forehead. After this series of actions, Ethan was completely stunned. At this moment, the phone rang, the message displayed. It's done. I immediately pulled my hand back. I took out an alcohol wipe from my bag. I wiped it several times. As for acting, who can't do that? Ethan looked at me with a confused expression. I don't understand why my attitude suddenly changed. He asked softly. Wife, you're not angry with me anymore, right? I shook my head. He looked very happy. My dad's grave. I have already moved it. He always regretted not being able to return to his hometown for burial. This time I can finally send him back home. I'll handle it. Don't worry, wife. I'm sure I can manage it. No need. In the future, my dad's grave. And our family ancestral grave. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Victoria, what are you trying to do? Ethan stopped pretending. He revealed his true self. He said, I tried my best to coax you, but you still remain unmoved. Are you made of stone? Let me tell you. I will soon join the business association. At that time, many big shots will invest in me. I will dilute your shares. Then they will kick you out of the company. I stood up and prepared to leave. Speak. Then I wish you all your wishes come true. Ethan still placed his last hope on the Chamber of Commerce. He spent a large sum of money to bribe Uncle Joe. The day after he was discharged from the hospital, Uncle Joe finally took him privately to the Chamber of Commerce's high-level secret meeting held every 3 months. It is said that every time the peak secret meeting is held, there will be a major change in the business world. It is said that those big shots bring the world's top projects to participate. Every Chamber of Commerce event can bring huge benefits and wealth to its members. Ethan saw the business tycoons he rarely encountered here. Their power and wealth were the goals Ethan had always pursued, but found hard to reach. Ethan was originally in high spirits. Suddenly, he saw me in the crowd. He immediately calmed down. He questioned me. How did you get in? He walked up to me. Lowering his voice, he struggled to control his emotions and said, I came in with my head held high. I took a glance at the document in his hand. You came with a proposal. Then I wish you good luck. Ethan wanted to say something more, but the proposal meeting had already started. His attention immediately shifted to his own proposal. Uncle Joe had Ethan present the proposal to the big shots in his own name. Ethan was full of confidence about this project. After he enthusiastically finished his introduction, the big shots began to discuss among themselves. He walked to the last row and sat down next to me. He said, Victoria, I will definitely win by then. You will be begging me not to divorce. I scoffed. Then, under Ethan's surprised gaze, I walked step by step to the front row. I picked up his project book and tore it to shreds in public. Ethan heard that the proposal was approved. He immediately rushed to the front and angrily questioned, "What qualifications do you have to speak? This is not the place for you to voice your opinion, Victoria. This is the Chamber of Commerce. Everyone here has a status. Don't make a fool of yourself here." He excitedly pulled me away, but he hadn't even touched my wrist. He was pushed away by a big guy with a dark expression. Ethan knows this person. He is the second in command of the Chamber of Commerce. His status is second only to the president. He is quite influential. Moreover, he is the only one who has met the president. Mr. Zero. The big guy with a dark face took off his sunglasses. He looked at me closely. There was surprise in his eyes. I smiled sweetly at him. Uncle Black. Long time no see. Uncle Black excitedly picked me up. He almost spun around. He asked, "What brings you here? Didn't you say you didn't want to come before?" "Little girl, I haven't seen you in a long time." Ethan stood there, looking a bit dazed. Uncle Black held my hand. He walked up to everyone and said, "Haven't you all been saying you wanted to meet Mr. Zero? Next, I will introduce him to everyone. This is Mr. Zero." A chorus of gasps immediately erupted around. Some were skeptical. Some were surprised. I calmly took out the pocket watch that represented Mr. Zero. Everyone immediately stood up in respect. Everyone nodded at me in acknowledgement. However, except for Ethan and Uncle Joe. Ethan pointed at me. With a face full of disbelief, he said, "This is impossible. How could this be? We've been married for so long. I never knew you were Mr. Zero. You are lying to me. Those people were hired by you to act, weren't they?" Ethan was on the verge of breaking down. He said some unpleasant things while pointing at me. As he spoke, he stepped back. I carefully hung the pocket watch around my neck, like it was a precious treasure. Uncle Black stands properly behind me. I looked at Ethan with disdain. "Speak. Ethan, you only know that my father made the Victoria family wealthy through his own efforts, but have you ever thought about where his initial funds came from? That was my mother's property, given to her by my grandfather. The Victoria family is not considered a prominent family. Once my father passed away, the family fortune could easily decline, but my mother is different. She truly comes from a family with a legacy spanning over 10 generations. My grandfather held a high position in the family. He was respected by everyone. Unfortunately, he only had one daughter, my mother, and my mother, too, has only me as her child. The power and wealth of my grandfather's family have been passed down to me. The business association was established by my grandfather. My mother later took over his work. My mother later took over his job. Now it's my turn. Those big shots don't care whether their leader is male or female, whether young or old, as long as I can bring them wealth and value. I am the true Mr. Zero." Ethan was momentarily stunned. Then he started laughing. It was as if he had received a huge stimulus. He became extremely excited. "My project can make you a lot of money. Anyone with a bit of sense can see that. Are you really going to give up the chance to make money just because she is not very capable? Are you really going to give up the chance to make money?" I had Uncle Black plug the USB drive into the big screen. "Ethan, your project, it's purely to make money for yourself. The USB drive is filled with evidence of Ethan's project issues. Additionally, Uncle Joe said this project made him money. They just pocketed a large sum of money from Ethan and then made false accounts. These two colluded together, planning to take the investment and run away with the money, but they underestimated the people in the Chamber of Commerce. They underestimated me even more. Victoria, are you here specifically to harm me, to watch me fail? Do you find it very amusing? I saved your dad's life. Why are you treating me this way? Have you forgotten that we once lived and died together? Why are you treating me this way?" I didn't respond to Ethan's questions anymore. I just waved my hand, indicating for the bodyguards to escort Ethan and Uncle Joe out. Victoria said with a smile, "Your whole family is ungrateful. You will face bad consequences. Their issues will naturally be investigated and handled by the relevant departments." He asked me every question. I already had the answers myself. Ethan did help our family, but kindness cannot erase all wrongs. Every hurtful word he said to me, every action he took that harmed me, will not disappear because of his kindness. Ethan wanted to join the business association, but he was unsuccessful. The big deal I helped him negotiate before was also canceled by me. He did it without permission, misappropriating a large amount of public funds for Uncle Joe's operations. The entire company suffered a cash flow crisis as a result, on the brink of bankruptcy. Ethan also plans to create buzz through a divorce. He once again promotes himself through marketing accounts. Subsequently, I exposed all the evidence of his improper relationship with Linda. Not just with Linda. It also includes his past affairs with several female assistants. Ethan's image as a devoted person was completely shattered. I revealed everything. The evidence shows he even discussed plans with friends, planning to stage a performance about protecting my father's grave. He tried to win everyone's sympathy and approval this way. However, public opinion suddenly shifted dramatically. Ethan has now become the target of everyone's criticism. Everyone expresses dissatisfaction with him. At this point, he has completely lost everything. He still refuses to divorce me. However, I have too much evidence to sue him. I don't even need to attend the court hearing in person. The lawyer can leave him speechless in front of the judge. He no longer wants a divorce, but it has to follow the court's ruling. After the divorce, I burned the divorce certificate for my father. Both he and I were mistaken before. Now I withdraw in time. I believe he will also think this is a wise decision. I heard Ethan is working at a construction site now. He still talks big every day, claiming he can definitely get back on his feet. As for Linda, she left as soon as she heard he went bankrupt. The workers at the site don't like him. Whenever he starts to show off, everyone will rebut him without hesitation, making him blush with embarrassment. One day, he finally couldn't take it anymore. He got into a fight with those who mocked him. As a result, one of them was seriously injured. Another unfortunately died. After Ethan was arrested, life has fallen into a predicament. After he was imprisoned, I visited him once, through the glass. He looked very haggard, as if he aged 20 years in an instant. I thought he would lose control and shout loudly, but unexpectedly, he was very calm. He just asked me, "Victoria, why are you being so heartless to me? I know, cheating doesn't really matter to you." I looked into his eyes, as if I saw my own youth. "Ethan, when you saved my dad back then, I actually already knew who he was." Right, Ethan's eyes became evasive. I continued to speak. "I have always believed in you, but your matters are too easy to investigate. Once investigated, everything is exposed. Once you investigate, everything is exposed. And you pursued me back then." He proposed to me after the earthquake. In fact, he left his first love, who had fought alongside him for several years. Right, she even lost a child for you. Yet you abandoned her for status and money. You discarded her. The news about my divorce with you went viral. She reached out to me voluntarily. She hopes I can teach you a lesson you deserve.